So Brother Reggie is going to lead us first in the Launica.
Right. So everybody mute.
Everybody mute, and then we'll follow Brother Reggie.
Okay. Could you, just by show of thumbs, could you hear me loud and clear? All right, good. All right, thank you. Let's see if this works. I've been practicing. Okay. Em, ja, ho, zi, ze, o, o, o.
And then we'll do the harmony of
Thank
three.
you, Brother Reggie.
That was perfect. Yay. Wow, we heard everything perfect. So the harmony of three, we take our ka and our ja and we spin them forward into perfect sync together.
We were going to use a
No,
little.
we don't need to. Everybody's here. Knows how to do it.
All right, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to use this as a spinning.
So we're spinning forward. Everybody can see that?
Yeah.
And now we're spinning them backwards. So it's backwards towards us. Yeah, perfect sync and harmony. Now we're spinning horizontal clockwise. And then counterclockwise. And then vertical clockwise.
Skye said I was going the wrong way, so maybe I better not use that.
Well, I don't know if this is reflection.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
is.
a
Yeah.
mirror.
that'll mess us up.
Mhm.
So
Horizontal clockwise, you can just picture a clock flat on the table going around
right,
clockwise.
so you're doing horizontal clockwise and counterclockwise, horizontal. Now we go to vertical where you're looking at a clock. Go clockwise, ka ja, perfect sync and harmony, and now counterclockwise, ka ja. Now we leave them spinning together in harmony, and we go up to our Z and we add Z ka ja, spinning forward. And remember to make them they go into blurs of sparkling light. Backwards, Z ka ja, perfect sync and harmony. Spin horizontal clockwise. Counterclockwise. Z ka ja. Vertical clockwise. And counterclockwise. Z ka ja in perfect sync and perfect harmony together.
I was going to say a prayer for us.
Heavenly Father and Mother, we're so thankful for this opportunity to gather together with our brothers and sisters around the world. So thankful for the means to do this, the technology that allows us to connect. And we're so thankful for Miriam's stewardship and all that she does to help us, to keep us safe. And we are so humbled and thankful for having this special connection, this special involvement in our lives. Please help us to be the very best that we can be in all areas of our lives. Help us to take what we learned today and apply it. And we just thank you, we love you, and we appreciate all that you help us with. In Yeshua's name, so be it.
So be it.
So be it.
Guy's going to lead us now in removing any negative cords that might be attached to us from anything.
I just want you to reach up to the top of your head and we're going to pull out the negative, see it as a black cord to all the negative mass consciousness thinking, and just yank it out on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Send it back into the consciousness, let it dissolve, and then take your hand and seal that top of your head, all that hole that was made there, seal it in with a nice warm golden light. A complete sealed in cap, keeping that cord from reattaching. So be it.
So be it.
So be it.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with the reason I call this special meeting. It's supposed to be a priesthood meeting, but I guess we're all here for the normal priesthood meeting anyway, so we go ahead and call it the priesthood meeting, seeing as nobody else joined us, which is surprising, but their loss. I have been communicating with Miriam a lot just before and since this war in Ukraine started. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes that I can't even tell you all about, but there's a lot that's going on that's not put in the news as well. And the situation is pretty frustrating. Putin, who's the leader of Russia, attacked Ukraine, and he's basically told all of the other countries that would like to come help, because it's not a pleasant thing that's happening. And he's basically told them, hey, I have nuclear weapons, and if any of you guys try to help, you better watch out. It'll be the worst thing you've ever experienced. And so countries that would like to help and prevent the whole thing from happening and have the capabilities to do that are having to stand back because they don't want to get nuked. And so it's an interesting situation. So I'd like to just go ahead and start a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to put up a map. Find it again. And let's see here. Share screen. Okay, can everybody see this map? Nobody can see the map?
Yeah, you can see it now.
We can see it now.
Yeah, you can see it. Mhm.
All right. So some of you may not be familiar geographically with where all of these things are taking place. So I want to bring this map up to show you. So here is the Ukraine, and here is Russia. And as a reference point, this little teeny place right here, that's where Dancia and Alex live. So anyway, you can see they're actually very close to what's happening. They're about the distance of about Sacramento, California to Seattle, Washington. That's about that distance right there. All right, so other countries that you would recognize, here's France, here's Germany, here's the United Kingdom, here's Spain, here's Turkey, here's Egypt, here's Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia. So they can see that Ukraine is kind of right in the center of everything. Here's the Nordic countries up here, Finland and Sweden and Norway. I'm going to go in a little closer now. Oh, that was the wrong direction, sorry. Okay, so just keep this in mind as I'm talking. I'm just going to leave this map up for right now. So I wanted to make sure that everybody really understood what was going on and why this is such an issue, even if it's on the other part of the world, thousands of miles from where you live, how this is going to affect you. I mean, it's not a maybe might affect you, it is going to affect you. And so one of the stewardships of the angel of coming to be aware of, that she tells me so that I can tell you, and that's my stewardship to make sure I tell you. So that's kind of why we're having this meeting today. And the longer this conflict goes on, the greater your life's going to be affected. So today's meeting is not intended to engender fear. So I want to make sure we start with that at the beginning. This is not a meeting about fear, just the opposite. Knowledge is power. And today, I hope to impart greater knowledge to you so that you'll be able to take actions to ensure that you and your family will always have the best possible outcomes, regardless of what problems are facing the world or what challenges come from places beyond our control. So let me start with a little background. If you look at the map of Ukraine, and you're in Russia, this war is only 12 days old. Today's the 12th day of this war. But it's already resulted in over 1.5 million refugees from Ukraine fleeing to neighboring countries. And they had to flee with nothing more than the clothes on their back and what they could carry in a small backpack. Prior to this war, even starting with a full-scale Russian invasion 12 days ago, the world was already experiencing the worst inflation that it's seen since 1979. And the war in Ukraine, even if it doesn't expand beyond the borders of Ukraine, is going to make inflation rise even higher and quicker. Why? Why would that be? Well, it's because of food and oil. That's why. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background here. Russia and Ukraine together supply 1/3 of the world's wheat. And they're major exporters of barley, corn, and sunflower oil. Ukraine's the #1 exporter of sunflower oil. Fighting has disrupted all the exports and led to record prices on the international markets. So the cost of wheat today is at a 40-year high, and it's going to go higher. Most of all of your breads and your pastas in the whole world are made with wheat, and it's an essential food in many countries. As there was already a crunch in the world supplies before this war started, there's no country in the world that can make up the shortfall for wheat and other exports that usually come from the Ukraine and Russia. Now, if you look at the map of Ukraine, you see to the southern end of there is the Black Sea. And the Black Sea ports along Ukraine and Russia are where all these supplies to the Middle Eastern countries and the African countries originate. And if there's no way for the ship to go in and out, then which there isn't right now because of the war disruption, then things just sit in Ukraine and Russia, and even though they may be there, they don't get shipped out. Now, some countries, and actually many countries, that do rely on the Russian and Ukraine wheat, and corn, which again is primarily your Middle Eastern and African countries. Some of those countries were already experiencing food shortages before the war began. And some of them are particularly vulnerable. For instance, Egypt gets 85% of its wheat, which is its primary food grain, from Russia and Ukraine. Now remember, there's no substitute for that wheat. There's no other country that can say, okay, we're going to make up that shortfall of 85% of the wheat that your country needs to eat to make bread and pastas. Now, oil and natural gas are the other big crunch. Most people don't realize all the things that oil are used for. They think about oil, making fuel to run their cars, maybe heat their house, and they don't think about oil beyond that. But there are literally hundreds of products that are made from oil being refined. Most plastics are made from oil. Oil is actually an organic substance. It's a decay of organic materials, so it can make organic substances. There's many other products that are made from oil. So when the price of oil goes up, it's not just the price of gasoline at the pump or heating oil in your house. It's the price of all these substances and products that are made from oil that also have to go up.
Did you know even toothpaste has petroleum, is petroleum based or has
Some toothpaste, yep.
So there's so many products that you use every day that have petroleum in them, from countertops to so mmany things that you wouldn't even realize are oil based.
Right. So the refining process of oil, even if you ever looked at raw crude oil, it's a really stinky, terribly smelly substance. But when they put that substance through the refining process, and they have all different layers of refining, and little tubes come out here, little tubes come out there, and each tube puts a different level of refining that they can make all these other products from that don't have odors or anything like that. Anyway, the current price of the barrel of oil today current price is $115 a barrel. That's how they sell oil, pump it out of the ground, they put it in barrels, and that's how it's sold. That's the highest price for oil since June of 2008. If it takes out that price from 2008, it'll be the highest price of oil ever. So as a reference point, in April of 2020, the price of a barrel of crude was $20. Now it's $115. So that gives you a reference. The average price of crude, if you look at it over the years, runs about $50 to $60 a barrel on average. I just read this morning, I was quite shocked, that the price of gas in the United Kingdom just hit 3 pounds per liter at some stations. Now, for those of you who are familiar with pounds and liters, that equals $12 per gallon in US dollars. And again, it's going to go up. In both Europe and every other country, the price is going to just keep going up fast as long as that war in Ukraine continues. Why is that? Russia is the world's third largest exporter of crude oil, and the world's number one exporter of natural gas. Europe gets 40% of its natural gas used to heat homes and power industries through pipelines that flow from Russia, and many of those pipelines go through Ukraine on their way to Europe. Some countries are more vulnerable to disruptions in the gas supply from Russia than others. Dancia and Alex live in North Macedonia, for instance. They get 100% of their natural gas from Russia. 100%. So if that gas supply is turned off or disrupted because of a gas pipeline being blown up or any other number of things, their country has zero natural gas to come in. So what they have in storage, I don't know what they have in storage, but whatever it is, that's gone, it's gone. So these are serious situations. Just the threat, without any disruptions, maybe everything's still flowing through the pipelines, but just the threat of oil and gas pipelines being destroyed in the war, or of Russia turning off the flow as a punishment for Western countries supporting Ukraine, that's what sent the prices so high, and that's what's going to continue to have those prices continue to go up as long as this conflict goes on. Okay. Now, natural gas, again, people don't realize all the things that come from oil and natural gas. Most people think of natural gas, well, yeah, it comes up, you can heat your home with it, or you can cook food with it. And that's about the extent of what they think about natural gas. Well, many countries actually power vehicles with natural gas. Right here in where we live, they have buses powered by natural gas. But more important than that, we were talking about the limitations on the exports of corn and wheat and other grains from Ukraine and Russia, and how that's going to affect many farmers and countries in the Middle East and Africa. But there's a more serious problem than that. Russia is also the number one exporter of fertilizer. And guess where fertilizer comes from? That you didn't know, comes from natural gas. They're able to take natural gas, which again is an organic substance, and extract from it ammonia, nitrogen, things like that they then make ammonium nitrate, which is the number one fertilizer that's used for crops around the world. So even if somebody's growing something completely different, like alfalfa or soybeans, and maybe they're in some other country in the world that's not even connected to Ukraine or Russia, so they think, but they still get their fertilizer from Russia through the natural gas process. So any kind of food crop that relies on fertilizers, not grown organically, is going to have a big disruption in what they are able to harvest in the fall, because they're not right now. This month, March, is when they need to get their fertilizer because they're getting ready to do their spring planting. They don't have their fertilizer, their plants aren't going to grow much. They're not going to have much of a harvest in the fall. So these prices that you're seeing, even if this conflict were to end today, which it's not going to, food prices, fuel prices, and everything connected to food and fuel are just going to continue to go up. So you need to be aware that inflation, despite what any politicians might say, is not going away tomorrow. Today, I'd like to summarize some of the key things that we can all do to be better prepared. And I should emphasize that major disruptions to your life do not need to be on a national scale. For instance, in early January in 1997, here in Ashland, Oregon, where we live, we went to bed on a normal night on December 31st. But when we woke up in the early morning of New Year's Day, our town had been devastated by a flood at night while we slept. During the night of December 31st, a Pineapple Express flowed over southern Oregon. This is an atmospheric river of very moist, warm air. It's not something you want to see in the middle of winter. Instead of our normal high temperature of on December 31st of 35 degrees with snow and a low temperature down in the 20s, we had 60 degrees and torrents of rain, which quickly melted the big snowpack up in the mountains. And the combination of lots of rain and massive sudden snow melt created the flood. I actually have a picture here that I was going to show you. Here's a picture that was taken not far from our house during the flood. And this is the center square of the town. These are all shops along the square here. This is normally a road that became a gigantic creek, and it flowed. Okay, can sit my okay, there we go. And it flowed over the road. This actually was a road here that collapsed. This was the road right next to the road we live on, and it just collapsed. And the road. And so anyway, that's what happened to us at that time. Now the flood cut off electricity.
You want to stop the share and put the map back up?
Okay. All right. Hold on a second. I got to stop the share, and then I won't put the map back up because I'm done with that.
Okay.
All right. So that flood cut off electricity. It severed all water lines, required all the gas lines to be turned off, and it blocked most of the roads into town, cutting off supermarkets from food deliveries. That same flood was not just in Ashland. It affected much of Southwest Oregon and Northwest California. In fact, one of the small towns nearby in Northern California was completely wiped off the map by that flood. Electricity was restored after a couple of days, but we had no water for 10 days. And little food was available in the stores because food trucks couldn't make deliveries to get into town. Now, water is essential not just for drinking and cooking, but also for flushing toilets. Now, think about that inconvenience for a moment. 10 days with no water, 10 days without being able to flush your toilet. The Army brought in water tankers, and we had a way to make our way down. We had to make our way down to the Armory every day to fill up jugs of water and then tote them back home. Now, we learned some very valuable lessons about being prepared for unexpected calamities during that flood. Today, we live up on a mountain above town, far above the flood zone. We have generators and inverters as backup power sources. Our house runs on electricity. We also have natural gas for cooking and as a backup heat source. We also have a big wood fireplace that we could utilize to heat the main room if needed. And we also have a great well that puts out high quality water out of all of our taps as much as we need. And if the water plant shuts down, doesn't bother us, we have our own well. Even if the electricity stopped and water pumps stopped because it didn't have any electricity, we could still draw water from the cistern or even directly from the well with buckets on a rope. We have a well-stocked pantry, plus 30 days extra food downstairs or more. We have enough sprouting seeds to grow fresh greens for years. And if for any reason, such as war or any other type of disruption, we would need to quickly abandon this house, we have bug-out bins full of essential items that we need to survive if we had to be mobile. Now, in the 1970s, probably before most of you were even born, I used to teach wilderness survival. And the same 4 categories of essentials that I taught then are just as needed for each of us today in our homes, or even if we're mobile and on the move, to ensure that we can easily get through any disruption to our normal supplies and circumstances. So I'm going to put this up on the screen so you can see it. All right. So these are the 4 categories in actual order of importance: shelter, fire, water, and food. Shelter is number 1 because you can die in less than 24 hours from exposure to too much heat or too much, quickly to give you warmth cook your food, and boil your water that may be contaminated with bacteria. Water's number 3, because most people can still function without water for 3 days and stay alive without water for 4 days. And food is last, because most people can last for weeks without food and still be fully functional. One of the other items that's not on this list is if you're someone that has a critical need for certain medications, such as a diabetic with insulin, it's very prudent course to always have a 30-day supply on hand at all times for whatever might happen. Now, I'm going to encourage you to look at this list that I'm coming up next. I'm going to share the screen again and ask yourself these questions. This will help you hopefully think about how prepared you are and what you might need to do to be more prepared. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's
I can see it.
Thank you, Reggie.
Sure.
So let's look at these questions and ask yourself these questions. Do you have a dependable shelter? Talking about where you live right now. Number 2, if you had to leave your home suddenly and not be back for some time, if ever, where would you go? And how would you provide shelter for you and your family? If your electricity was cut off, how would you provide power and heat, at least on a limited basis, to your home? If you had to leave your home and be mobile, in what way will you have fire for cooking and heat? If water no longer came out of the taps of your house with no expectation of when it might return, how would you get water to drink and cook? How would you deal with waste that would normally be flushed down toilets that no longer flushed? If the shelves in your supermarkets were bare, how would you get food to eat for the first week? How would you get food to eat for the second week and beyond? If there were physical, violent threats to you and your family from people outside of your home, from soldiers to rioters to thieves, how are you prepared to deal with them and protect your family? If you needed to flee to a safe place not more than 100 miles from your home, but in a place far less likely to be involved in civil unrest and disruptions, where would you go? If your employment ended and you had no income and your credit cards no longer worked and your bank was closed without a reopen date, what are you going to use to pay for food or services or items you might need? If you have an emergency stash of cash, money, gold, silver, something that's stored in a bank safety deposit box, what would you do for money if you no longer had income from employment? If there's no, means that the contents of your safety box aren't available to you, or maybe they're even confiscated by someone. So my brothers and sisters, during the next week, I encourage you to think about these things and determine answers for these questions in your life so you will be better prepared. Searches on the internet, you can find several excellent sources for all types of supplies that will help you. Now, one excellent source, I'm putting this up to where you can see, one excellent source is mypatriotsupply.com. Just going to that site and looking at what they have available, you'll get a lot of ideas, things that could help you and that you should probably have in your home. When it comes to food, your own needs, your storage space, and your finances. For instance, many Mormons maintain a 1-year supply of food, but this is done mostly just with storing 5-gallon buckets of wheat berries. So they may have 100 pounds of wheat berries stored, but they don't have a lot of other things. But wheat berries by themselves are very nutritious. They can be boiled for hot cereal or ground into grains to make breads and pastas. Another more active method that I've seen for people that use a lot of canned goods, and this is pretty cool if you use a lot of canned goods, is they build shelving units in their pantry that have a slight angle to the shelves. And then they lay their cans on the side with the oldest can of something that's the lowest end of the shelf, and that's the can that's going to be used next. And when they buy new cans of the same product, they put them at the far end, the upper end of the shelf. So they're always using their food. It's not just there for some emergency. They use it every day. They take the can on the lowest part of the shelf, and that becomes their dinner for the night or part of their dinner for the night. New cans, then go to the store, go to the other end of the shelf. So everything rolls down and it's always being used, which is kind of a cool method if you use a lot of cans, which hopefully most people in our group don't use a lot of canned food, but it is something you can do.
You can do similar things with grains and legumes.
Right. Just have them move down the shelf, or even if you have a level shelf, just on the left side where you take the oldest stuff and the right side where you put the newest stuff.
Or in our case, we put it in another room downstairs.
Yep, that's right. We have jars of things. Samara's going to show you some more of those in a minute. So if you can afford the extra expense, There are excellent freeze-dried foods available. My Patriot Supply sells many, and you can get them other places too, that pack meals for multiple people in just a small sealed pouch. And they're especially useful for bug-out bags. Make sure you have some food when you grab that bug-out bag to get out quick. So I have to tell you about this one house that I visited. This was back when I was in my early 20s, so decades ago. But it was a prepper, and he showed me his secret safe room. So he had one of those floor-to-ceiling bookcases, but it swung out when you pressed the secret button, and it revealed a large hidden room filled with a year's supply of food, water, plenty of guns and ammunition. There was a secret escape tunnel if the room needed to be evacuated. And the back of the bookcase, which faced inside the regular room of the house, was lined with a sheet of bulletproof steel, and the walls were all reinforced concrete. So I don't recommend anybody goes to that extreme, but just to give an example of some of the extremes that some people do go to. As I said, I've taken a couple of days, just in the last couple of days, I've taken about 8 pages of notes from conversations with Miriam, where I asked a lot of questions, particularly about what we can do as Celestines with our connections to angels and magic to help rectify bad situations. And I'd like to share some part of her answers with you now. I'm not going to share all that. I mean, we're talking about a lot of information. So, but I want to talk about what each individual, close family, Celestine family, and people in the world at large can do to ensure greater security, prosperity, and peace in their life and in the world. And so to facilitate that, it's important to understand why it's necessary to even be thinking and acting upon future events that have not even occurred, and why making small changes in our lives today can have large and vital benefits to our life in the future. Now, as war-ravaging events this last week in Ukraine have shown us, and in many other less catastrophic but still locally unsettling events in previous years, such as our experience we had in Ashland with the flood, regardless of where someone lives, major disruptions can occur that cause them to unexpectedly become homeless, jobless, and without essential services and necessities such as shelter, water, power, and food. So now I'm going to be reading, most of this is actually what Miriam actually said, maybe places where I changed the wording a little bit to make it clearer. So just as I'm speaking here, just remember this is mostly 98% of what Miriam said word for word as I wrote it down. From regularly occurring natural disasters such as floods, famines, fires, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, to human-caused events such as pollution, recessions, riots, wars, and nuclear power disasters, every person, at least once in their lives, will experience a significant dislocation and interruption, perhaps even destruction of their normal way of living, caused by larger forces beyond their control. For a good number of people, these types of traumatic experiences will occur multiple times in their lives. Being prepared for disruptive calamities is not just prudent. And this is Miriam speaking, I consider it to be essential for ensuring not only weathering storms better than most people, but also having a long life of happiness, despite the darts and arrows of demons, the fickle destruction of nature, or the follies of the misguided leaders of the world. Your first preparation is your mindset. Must be one that is grounded in reality while being unlimited in the possibilities of creating the life you desire within the reality of what is possible. Your mindset must also include the ability to tune out the naysayers that would put you down, and a determination to overcome obstacles that will impede you. For instance, though you may be impoverished and have no family or financial support, you could see your future as a college graduate, perhaps even a doctor. Though it may seem almost impossible, it is in fact an attainable goal if that becomes your mindset, and your mindset dictates all of your actions to fulfill that goal. That is an example of a great possibility grounded in reality. On the other hand, if you were in the same circumstances and instead decided you were going to become the world's most famous underwater explorer without going to college or even taking time to understand the dynamics of the ocean, that would be an unattainable goal because it would be missing key components such as education necessary to ground it in an achievable reality. However, were you to include gaining skills and knowledge of oceanography and exploration through attendance at a university, the same mindset of becoming the most famous underwater explorer in the world would be an achievable mindset grounded in reality. There are also large events or circumstances that occur in the world affecting many people, such as an example, what's happening right now in Ukraine, that may or may not have a direct bearing upon your life, such as wars, poverty, or natural disasters, that you want to change for the better. You may feel empathy and want to do something to stop the war, end the poverty, or prevent the volcano from erupting. Realizing affecting something so large is beyond your personal capabilities, you may think to combine with others and use meditation, prayer, priesthood, or magic to amplify the energy sufficient to overcome the challenge. Group focuses such as these are noble, feel-good exercises that make the helpless feel that somehow they are actually helping, and they can help in a very small energetic way. But grounding in reality would be the realization that to affect something so large, to change its trajectory would require a force even greater than the capabilities of your group. What about calling upon angels or Elohim to intervene? Certainly they are a greater force. However, despite all the prayers, supplications, or priesthood authority, neither Elohim nor their angels will intervene. In these large circumstances, for many reasons, they are watchers only, even though to the people affected or to those anguishing about the circumstances from afar, that may seem the epitome of callousness. The Elohim and their angels, if called upon, and this is a very important point to understand the difference here. The Elohim and their angels, if called upon, will most certainly help and save individuals, families, and groups of righteous children of light that are doing everything they can to also help themselves. But they will not act directly to affect the larger dynamic of catastrophes that may be occurring, and it's important that you understand why. Again, this is Miriam speaking. A vitally important reason that everyone comes into a physical body is to experience both the joys and heartbreaks of mortality, to experience both the tragedies and the triumphs. It is through these experiences, both the good and the bad, both the pleasurable and the painful, that each person grows and expands their knowledge, their empathy, their ability to achieve harmonious relation to their being, and to help others do so as well. This is a grand design of Elohim, the path they have created to help their children to become the gods they can be. When children of light, whether they are Celestines or not, are walking that path, Elohim will help them in their struggles and challenges, whatever they may be, because they are righteous children of light, making all the personal efforts they can to overcome their challenges. In these cases of individuals or groups of children of light, united in purpose and actions, calling upon angels or Elohim will be most beneficial in matters that pertain directly to that person or group of children of light. However, to affect events that are occurring on a larger scale, such as poverty, war, or natural disaster, neither Elohim nor their angels will intervene, even if beseeched to do so by the children of light. Sorry for my parrot, wants out of the cage. Or even by the priesthood of Celestine light. Why is this? It is because in that larger group will be many people, maybe even the majority, that are not worthy of the help of the angels of Elohim. They do not live their lives in the light. Many live their lives in great darkness. Murderers, rapists, those who beat their children and their animals, thieves, and all manner of sinners that break the 12 commandments of Sinai regularly in every way they think they can get away with. Children of light that may be mixed in with larger groups of sinners will be blessed to be warned either by their guardian angels or through the priesthood to flee or prepare before the events occur to ensure that they will not be detrimentally affected. But if they choose to heed not the warnings, then they will likely suffer the same consequences as the sinners in the larger group that had no warning. In this, please take heed. As I have been giving, this is again Miriam speaking, as I have been giving warnings of preparation to you, the Celestine children of light, for some years, I am sad to see that even now few have acted upon my admonishments to be prepared. Let us now turn to another non-threatening way. Aspirations need to be grounded in reality to be attained. Please do not misunderstand. Truly great and magnificent aspirations beyond the imaginations of most people can be achieved by those who are focused and believe in their dream. But there still must be a foundation of achievability. For example, let us take your aspiration for a community of Celestopia. This is a hypothetical example just given. If you set a goal to build a Celestopia community on the moon in the next 5 years, beginning from where you now are with a handful of Celestines scattered around the world, without vast sums of money, without any scientific or engineering expertise, hopefully you would realize that this would be an unrealistic, ungrounded, and unachievable goal and would not waste a moment trying to make it occur. Scaling back a bit, if you desire to create your envisioned floating city of Celestopia on an ocean of your Earth, also within the next 5 years, you would still need vast sums of money and scientific expertise, plus the pioneers to work and live in the city. Looking realistically at other challenges, 5 years would be too short of a time frame, though it would be possible, or more possible, with a longer time frame. However, even if it was built, how would you defend it against marauders or military from countries that might either oppose it or want to possess it? And think not that you could use the technologies or weapons of the Savasi. Elohim would not allow you to introduce advanced alien technologies or weapons to your Earth. That would merely exacerbate your problems, as the militaries of the world would strive to gain that which you have. Here again, you need to ask yourself if building a floating Celestopia city, or even a smaller community, starting from where you are in 5 to 10 years, is grounded in an achievable reality. Perhaps you could locate it in a remote enough part of the world where neither marauders or governments would find it worth their while to bother you. But if located in such a remote and inaccessible part of the world, how many people would you be able to find willing to actually live there? I'm not saying this could not be accomplished, merely pointing out the magnitude and challenges and asking to consider whether it is grounded in reality to make the focused, sustained efforts to overcome those great barriers. Scaling back a bit more, what if you considered a smaller, mostly self-sufficient community based upon land in a place as safe as possible from wars and natural or man-made disasters? This would be grounded in a reality that is achievable and very worthy of your efforts to accomplish it. If it was a strong enough desire to maintain a sustained focus and had a similar sustained focus from enough other Celestines to see it to fruition, creating such a community is actually a goal that I, my brother and sister angels, and the Elohim would all strongly support, as it is achievable and would best fulfill the preparations for calamities I have been exhorting you to be prepared for. I hope the examples I have given have helped you to understand more clearly how to set your dreams, goals, and aspirations on high goals that are achievable despite their height, and ones that you could count on the help of Elohim and the angels of Elohim to achieve. To aid in this, please commit to memory and regularly remind yourself of the serenity prayer. Elohim, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Remember also that a thought leads to an action. An action has consequences, and the consequences can be either good or bad, insignificant or significant, relationship changing, event changing, life changing, or all three of the latter at the same time. Therefore, before you begin your road to preparation for whatever may come, be the master of your thoughts. May they be pure, virtuous, and see your life in harmony, prosperity, and security. As you think, and think often, it becomes your belief. Be the master of your thoughts. May they be pure, virtuous, and see your life in harmony, prosperity, and security. As you believe, so you act. And actions founded upon good beliefs and thoughts will bring about the reality you desire in the bubble of your personal life. This is the law of attraction. What you think and believe, you attract to you in direct proportion how often it is upon your mind and how strongly you believe in and feel worthy and deserving of the life that you desire. You are the creator and the master of your personal destiny. Your more delightful future will occur when you steadfastly intend for it to be so, and always act in harmony with your guiding intent. Alternatively, your dream of a better future for your life is dashed if you self-sabotage yourself because you don't truly feel worthy of such a life, or attain insufficient momentum upward because you allow events in your life to happen to you rather than you happening to them. Know then that the power is within you to achieve great dreams, and to do so with the knowledge and power you have gained from your personal efforts and with blessings and the help of the angels of Elohim, when you have done all you can do, and there is still more that must be done. Repeat, then repeat once more. I have asked Embrosewyn to go through my past admonishments of preparation and present them to you again in the fondest hope that more of you will heed my words. I fulfill my stewardship as the angel of the covenant to bless you with advanced actions you can take to ensure the prosperity and security of your family, but it is still up to you whether you choose to act and be blessed or not act and be left adrift when the moments of consequence come upon you. May you be blessed in all your endeavors. Namaste, Miriam. All right, brothers and sisters of light, I testify to you of the truth of things I have shared. Pray that you will take the actions to your heart, that they will help you to have a greater serenity, peace of mind, and security, because you are better prepared for whatever may come. Say this humbly in the name of our brother Yeshua. So be it.
So be it.
So be it.
So be it.
Sisters Sumara and Skye have some things they're going to share with you as well. So after they're done, we'll open this meeting to questions that you have on the topic we talked about. If you have questions. So Sumara, you have something you want to share with us?
I was just going to go over some food storage techniques again that we went over, I think, almost 2 years ago now. So Brother Reggie and Sister Dansha, this will be a repeat, but a reminder. So we found that stored grains will get bugs in them, but you can eat the bugs. I mean, you first open it, it's like, oh, especially when they're little wiggly worms. Yeah. So be prepared when you're storing grains, that's just something you're going to have to deal with. I think they're inside the grains. I don't know. I haven't had as much problem or as many problems with quinoa. This is, so we store quinoa, and also if you have space to store grains in the refrigerator, they won't get bugs, but most people don't have that much space. These are great containers. They're half-gallon glass, so there's no petroleum residue that's going to be left on the food. Legumes store excellently, and you can sprout them. These are white beans, so you can choose any legume that you like and get as much as you want. I mean, you can do it scientifically or mathematically and calculate, how much am I going to need for this amount of time? If you want a month's worth, a year's worth. I mean, the Mormons really have a great system that I went to a class once where they showed how to set up your kitchen for food storage to have a year's worth of supplies. And that is like Embrosewyn talked about, that you know what your staple foods are, and you have a year's supply, and you just use them. So once you have your supply, you don't just let it sit there. You use it, and then you replace it. So then it's not a huge thing to keep it going. Setting it up is more, that's the project. And having room to store it. We can't store everything in our kitchen, so we have a room downstairs with shelving that we have legumes and grains. And we also have a lot of sprouting seeds. You can grow all of your greens with seeds. You can either sprout them in jars very easily in an apartment, or you can grow them with a little bit of soil as microgreens, the same seeds. So they can grow up as little tiny greens. You could even grow them into giant plants if you wanted. But for regular use and availability, it takes 12 days for a tray of greens or microgreens to grow. And you can do that in your house. I've done it in a bedroom with a window. So you don't need to have a greenhouse. And
something Miriam told us is that everybody usually has salads, they eat lettuces, which is fine. They're good for you. But if you can do sprouts and microgreens, there is far more nutrition in those than lettuce. She said, let go of your lettuce and use your greens that come from the microgreens and the sprouts. So just keep that in mind when you're eating.
right. And you can even grow legumes if you wanted to, so that you have a lot of possibilities when you store your grains and legumes that you may not do on a regular basis. But in a survival situation, these are good things to have because they are easily stored, very nutritious, and quick to produce.
And you mean you can sprout the legumes? Is that what you're talking? Yeah.
Well, usually you can. I've found more and more, even buying food at the co-op, our local co-op, that they don't sprout anymore because they're irradiated. So you want to make sure that what you're buying can be sprouted. And otherwise, that would not be cool. So test what you buy before you buy a lot of it to make sure that it's going to do what you want to do. And that's all I have on food preparation or on prepared food storage. If anybody has any questions about that, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, and I don't have them.
Okay, so we'll open up the questions now. If anybody has any questions about any of the things we talked about today, needs more information, needs to know where to go, now it's time to ask.
I was going to share, when we're not on my computer, the Facebook post that I prepared. So remind me of that afterwards.
Oh, before we
because it's still there, but nobody can read it.
Before we get to questions, I forgot that a very important announcement. We're going to be getting off of Facebook because we've had too many of our posts that have been censored. Samara made a post the other day on our Celestine Light site, and you might have noticed this is currently unavailable. Well, that's because
it's been removed.
They took it down. They removed it. There was nothing in it. I mean, there was no politics in it. Nothing in it except
it had keywords.
Had keywords like Ukraine, maybe once in it.
Russian.
And so they determined that you don't have a right to hear about that. And that's just not acceptable. I mean, we're not talking about any radical things that were being posted or anything. And so I have had so many things taken down that I wish you had been able to see that you haven't, because Facebook won't allow you to see them. And even my own family, my own wife, if she makes a post, I don't see it. If I make a post, she doesn't see it. We have 7 kids. If any of them make posts, I'm not allowed to see their post. If I make a post, they're not allowed to see my post. I can go to their page, I can type their name in the search engine and go to their page and read what's done, but I don't get to see any posts just automatically pop up on my screen. If any of you make posts, I probably don't see them. And you'll find that you're in probably a similar boat. If you probably have many people that you think are your friends or your family, and they never post anything, well, they probably do. You just probably don't get to see it. because Facebook decides what you
they
get to
never respond to your posts because they don't see them.
see. Right. You say, well, how come nobody ever liked my post? Did I?
I ask my kids all the time, well, did you see my post? No.
So because of that, not just a little censorship, but rampant censorship, we're going to be getting off of that as soon as we can find a suitable place to go that allows us to have our good sites without that kind of censorship. We had started with, we have something on MeWe.
And I like that because it was very similar to Facebook. I just lost, I didn't stay involved because now
we got back active.
we got back into Facebook, but we started that so that we could get off Facebook, and then it kind of didn't put any energy into it. So it's still there, and it's very similar how it's set up to use like Facebook. I don't know what their censorship rules are now.
Supposedly that censorship, but we'll once we have
But
it all
it's not
resolved, we will
always
let
up to
everybody
them.
know.
They can be cut off. They can be told, well, you can't allow people to say this, or we're going to cut your internet off.
In any case, that's something just to be aware of, that we are going to transition somewhere else. Once we find the somewhere else, for sure, we'll let you know. Okay, questions, anybody?
So I have a question. Could you, if you can, or you could email to the group, provide the serenity prayer? I was trying to write it, but I kind of missed some things.
I can give it to you right now. Just a second.
Sure.
Okay. Everybody see it?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
And I have two more questions.
Okay.
One, as you started off with the meeting. Well, by the way, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. That we got this, because that's very powerful, and I'm honored and privileged to be part to get that. So I say thank you, and thank you to Miriam, the angel of covenant. Well, send that out. Hopefully she hears me. The question, I know you said there was a lot of things that you cannot say and you can say. I'm kind of curious about what you cannot say. I don't know if this would be a good space now to talk about or offline. But I'm kind of curious because, you know, a lot of misinformation that's not even talked about. I'm kind of curious what those things are, you know, that are spiritual in effect, right? And also non-spiritual.
I can answer a lot of questions. If you have any questions about what's really going on in the Ukraine, I can answer a lot of those questions that you're not going to hear on your news or things like that. As far as things that I can't talk about, is that both the Taz and Lazarus are very active over there right now, and I can't talk about any of the details of what they're doing.
Okay.
But as far as
But they're working on it.
the other thing I would recommend too, if you're reading any kind of traditional news sources in the countries you live in, they are going to tend to be very scant in what they actually provide information. If you want to see very thorough information about what's going on in the Middle East or Europe or anywhere in the world for that matter, the two sources I recommend are actually sources that people will get mad at you if they hear you look at those sources. Yeah, you look at that. You know, what kind of person are you? But those two sources are, number one is Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera is a media outlet that has both internet presence, they do newscasts, and they're based out of United Arab Immigrants. And they, what I like about them is and again, because it's an Arab station, they are going to have an Arab slant to some things, and you just take that into account. But as far as what they talk about, their newscasters are extremely professional, and they have very, very in-depth explorations of subjects. So they take Ukraine. If you, for instance, went to Ukraine and look for what they said about Ukraine, you're going to find that those articles that they have about Ukraine are going to be more up to date, contain far more information, including many, many videos of what's actually happening in the Ukraine. You won't see any of that stuff on your traditional news stations, not at all. And I don't care whether you watch liberal news stations like MSNBC or conservative ones like Fox News, you're not going to see this kind of information that you're going to get on Al Jazeera. Now, the other one that also works just that well are the Jewish newspapers out of Jerusalem. They have multiple English language Jewish newspapers, like Jerusalem Post as an example. There's another one too, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But they also, similar to Al Jazeera, they get into subjects in a greater detail, but they do it from a Jewish lens. So they'll have a lot of articles about, saving the Jews in the Ukraine or anything, but in that process, they'll also talk about things that you're not going to see on the regular news. But Al Jazeera is really good. That's the best one because they just have, it's a very professional, well-funded organization. And they have reporters all over the world in every major country, every major conflict. They have reporters that are on the ground in there filming videos, interviewing people, and really recommend that as a source.
You want to spell that?
Okay, let me
Just
see.
because it's hard to hear it.
Okay, so Skye wanted me to spell it, so I'm going to actually get it up for you real quick here, and then you can see it, what we're talking about. Okay, so here is Al Jazeera. There's the address up here, and then you can see this is like their main page right now, and you can see what's here. Russian strike destroy Ukraine's airport, and you can see all these different headlines they have. And if you go, how do I get this out? This is blocking something. Okay, well, anyway, over here they have their news things, and it's just a great site for. I don't go there every day to look at it, but if there's anything major happening in the world, like this event in Ukraine right now, then that's about the only time I look at Al Jazeera is when they have those kind of major events because they go into such detail about them. Any other questions, Brother Reggie? Do you have some others?
Yeah. This is basically related to what was posted by Sister Sumara on Facebook about energizing your aura with a 3-dimensional triangle. I kind of like that.
We're going to demonstrate that.
Right.
How are we going to do that? I can't do that with the computer. Okay. Well,
I guess you'll just have to do it. Not lying down.
okay. All right. Yeah. Just give me a little space here. Okay. So, all right. Imagine that instead of being vertical, imagine that you're seeing me horizontal. Okay. So I'm laying on my bed, and this is such a great exercise. And it's so powerful. If you do it, and just do it every night, just right before you go to sleep, you're going to be amazed at how you become so much more sensitive with your aura to everything around you all the rest of the day, and how much more energy you have as well. It's not uncommon for me to only get 3 to 5 hours sleep a night, but I have plenty of energy to do the things I need to do. This is one of the ways that happens. This also connects you so much more to all the energies around you, people, animals, and you can send it out as far as you want during this time. And even though this time may only last seconds long, the results are magnified many times more than those seconds. So anyway, so you're laying on your back. So my head's on my pillow back here. You're laying on my back, and your forehead is one of your spots. Basically, your alpha omega gateway here. And it's, even though it's on top of your head, it's close enough that it's going to come out to your forehead because you're laying on your back. And you put your hands at an angle about like this, so that they're forming a triangle from this hand to this hand to the forehead. So there's a triangle here. You can see it. All right. So now you envision, what you're going to want to envision is what? Okay.
I'm noticing Brother Reggie's hands are not flat.
Well, that's
Because
so
you're on your back.
This is how my hands would be.
Okay.
Right.
My hands would be laying like this. Okay. So, and my head's back. So remember, I'm just laying flat. Okay. So now you're going to envision a beam of white light shooting out of this hand to a spot about right. Shooting out of this hand to a spot pretty much right above your head there. And then another one's going to be shooting out of this hand to that same spot, and one's going to be shooting out of your forehead to the same spot, forming a 3-sided pyramid. So those 3 beams of light are shooting out, forming a 3-sided pyramid that peaks about right here. And now that is going to become one beam of white light, and it's going to shoot with the speed of light straight up through the roof, through the sky, into the heavens, as far as away as it goes. And then it's going to come shooting right back, and then hit that point, and then boom, all 3 points again. And then you're going to shoot it back. But there's a technique to do all this. So I just described what happens. Now I'm going to describe how you do it to make it happen. All right, so you're laying here, you've got your hands ready, and it's similar to what we've done before, where you take a deep breath and you exhale it, and as you're exhaling, you spin your aura, you see it in your mind, and you really work to feel it inside you. And if you are succeeding at this exercise, when you do the beams of light, you're going to really feel it inside you. So, and I'm talking about physically feel it. So we're going to, as we're taking a deep breath, and we're exhaling, and we're spinning faster and faster as we exhale. And when you get down to the bottom of your breath, you're no more breath to breathe out. Before you breathe in another breath, that's the time that you make that spin as powerful as possible, and you should really start to feel it inside you. And then as you take another breath and you exhale, you push it out those points, and that's when you make those light beams come up, hit the center point in the apex, and then shoot up to the sky. And this is going to take not even a second, a microsecond. It's going to go, and it's up there, and immediately you pull it back, and you feel it pulling back. So when you push it up, then you pull it back, and you feel it, and you can see it in your mind's eye, but you're also going to feel it coming, zooming back, hitting the apex, splitting into three, going in, and then filling up your body. It's like, whoa! And then you immediately shoot it back again. And again, it could be less than a second that takes place. And we'll just say a second for example purposes. So 1 second it's up, 1 second it's back, 1 second is up, 1 second is back. It's really fast, a second or less. And it's so much energy, and your body can only hold so much energy, that you're only going to be able to do that for 2 to 4 times before you can no longer do it anymore. You try to do it, and you just can't. You can't do it anymore. You don't have the power to exert the power anymore, because it's so alive inside of you right then that you don't have that kind of control anymore to be able to do it. So did that help explain it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank
Any other questions about anything? Specifically about our topics today? Is anybody? If you go on the internet, if you go to that My Patriot Supply, that's a great place to go, because as I said, they have examples of everything you could possibly ever want for any purpose. And if you look at those 4 things that I talked about and that Miriam talked about, and the 4 things from my wilderness survival class is shelter, fire, water, and food. And so you want to be able to know, well, what am I going to do for those 4 things? What's my game plan? If I ever need them, how am I getting them? And then, of course, if you need medications, that's a really big one, to make sure you have a 30-day supply. And even though we were talking about the Ukraine, the reason I talked about what happened to us in Ashton is for people to realize that these things, from any number of reasons, can happen to you where you live. And your disruption may be a few days, it may be a week, it may be, in our case, almost 2 weeks, it could be a month. So you need to have some preparation for that, so you're not just wondering, how am I going to deal with this?
And something to think about that just popped in my head, so many of us wear glasses, and like I need my glasses to see in the distance, particularly. I'd be lost if I didn't have my glasses. And everybody should have an extra pair, or if you wear contacts, you should have some that are in your to-go bag, or where you're going to grab them really quick as you go. It's just extra things like that, because if you were in a position where you couldn't get to an eye doctor, there's nobody to make your glasses, who knows? These are bad situations, and maybe we'll never have it, but be prepared.
I should go get the list of what's in our dugout box.
That'd be awesome if you have it. Yeah. The other thing, of course, is, income. As we talked about, if you don't have credit cards, they're not working, banks closed, any number of things. What are you doing for income? How you still have to, have some kind of commerce with other people and get things that you need. So how are you going to do that? And, I think we probably take it to a more serious extreme than most people need to do it. But, one of the reasons that we located a gold claim and have a gold claim is so that if worse came to worse, we can always get gold out of our gold claim for money, for trading. And so hard work, but if that's what you have, that's what you have.
I just looked up the site for the Patriot Supply. I kind of like what they have, so I'm gonna start ordering some stuff here.
It's a very good site. We've ordered a lot of things from them.
Yeah, I see it. The survival supplements and all that stuff. Okay, just want to let you know.
Thank you, Brother Reggie. For us, I think the one area that we still lack in, that we didn't used to lack in, but we lack in when we got rid of our old vehicle, we got 2 new vehicles, but both of them are very small. One's a Volkswagen Bug, and the other is a small Jeep Wrangler. So they don't have enough room for us to carry very much because we got ourselves, our birds, our dogs, not much left to put any other things. So we need to get a nice big trailer that we can haul behind us in case we ever need to leave. Okay, so
well, let me explain this. So we have 3 crates that are about this big. I forgot, I didn't measure them.
they're about 3.5 feet by 2 feet, and then about 2 feet deep.
So on each crate, I have them labeled so that I know exactly what's in them.
She's gonna post this on the.
So in this one, we have a lot of freeze-dried food, propane. We have a solar shower, waterproof bags, a hand-powered flashlight, toilet paper, shampoo, conditioner, dish soap, a hatchet, a hand crank radio, a cell phone power bank, a battery recharger, playing cards in case we're bored or want something fun to do. We have 4 emergency blankets. We have 4 emergency waterproof ponchos. These 2 things, several of these things you can get on My Patriot. We have a snake bite kit. We have fire discs. We have a magnesium fire starter, anti-radiation tablets, emergency water germicidal tablets.
Purify water that may not be pure.
And we also have a multi-level sprouter. Lots of free. We have about 40-day supply of freeze-dried food in case we need to leave. We're not going to be taking all of our jars of stuff with us. We have a tire repair kit and compressor. We have space blankets. We have a white gas camp stove. We have an all-purpose storm kit. We have fishing gear, a mini mag spare bulb. We have a vinyl and plastic repair kit. We have large stuff sacks, a sun kettle cooker, another solar shower, toothbrushes, tooth powder, stuff like that. So
That's what a bug out bag is.
crates,
bins.
So we were able to fit all of that in 3 bins that we can just grab and run out the door. Then we don't have to think about, besides our computer stuff that we'll have to gather.
That covers all of us and our animals.
Yeah.
Maybe is that something you could post on the site?
Yeah, I'll post all this.
And I'll post this Serenity prayer again as well too. So that's up to Okay, brothers and sisters, any other questions about anything? Dante, you've been very quiet today. You're the closest to that conflict.
How are you feeling?
Has this information been a benefit to you?
Well, yeah, since I don't watch the news, well, Alex watches mostly the news, and we do have Al Jazeera as a program on our the TV, so I am familiar with that. And he watches the news, and we are hitting Miriam's voice since the first Miriam's call since the first time you spoke, you know, about the buying gold and buying extra food. He's more for that appliances, for that appliance, and he just was buying some hatchets and hunting knives and like army equipment. He said we were just like robbers when we walked in the alley of the for where you can buy such things. And we are now preparing with some waters, extra bottles of water. So I tend to not escape, but bury myself in more. I'm the praying type. I use the words of power, just like to have a protective bubble around us. I pray for if something does happen overnight, so we as children of light stay protected. I pray for my students. I am keeping the energy of light, and he is getting the supplies. So
It's a good team
Yeah,
effort.
kind of like our team too.
Yeah, I'm Skye and I are more the praying ones, and he's the practical one.
And that's a really good point from what Miriam talked about, is that yes, we can call on angels and help and magic. All of that stuff works in our personal bubble or bubble of our family. But you know, if we want to say, okay, we want the war in Ukraine to stop, well, that's not going to happen. Not from our efforts. But we can do efforts to make it going in that direction, which we've done in our Shinar, by making sure that we don't have nuclear war. That's a big one. But yeah, there's one thing I can tell you, because Brother Edry asked if there's some things that I could tell you about the war. It is going to get worse before it gets better, according to Putin's plan anyway. And basically, like, one of the things that he's doing now is he's saying, okay, we're going to have humanitarian corridors that, and for like a 5-hour period, we're going to allow people to leave the town and go through and pass through, and then they can escape the shelling. And so
That makes it sound good.
yeah, it makes it sound really good, but when it goes into effect, like they tried to do that at one of their besieged towns the other day, and as soon as people started on the road, they were getting shot at and bombed at, so they had to turn back and go back to the town. But actually, the plan that they have, the diabolical plan they have, is actually to let those people get out, so that then they can say that when they totally destroy the town and bomb it into flat rubble, that there wasn't any civilians there. There were no children killed. There were no, because those all got out first. And so they're just combatants there. And that's actually their plan, to be able to take towns that won't surrender, is to let them allow the women and children to leave, so that then they can bomb the town to obliteration, and not have to say that they were bombing civilian targets, even though the entire town is destroyed. Those are all civilian targets. So,
Well, and you can say that Lazarus actually has a really excellent plan.
I can't talk about. Don't even bring that up.
Oh, well, I'm not telling what the plan is. I'm just giving everyone hope that he's really smart.
Lazarus is very.
I have,
This is the point where I truly believe that all the tasks from all the planets and Lazarus, and I know myself, if I start listening the news, my energy will fall down, and I don't want to vibrate on fear. This is why I wanted to ask the question Brother Reggie asked about the triangle, because if I visualize something even more bigger to send a light being, So this is what I'm figuring all out, what to do as a high priestess, as a child of light, to save all children of light. This is my calling. I'm doing the light work. So keeping up myself in all this situation. It's not that I'm not listening, but I'm just keeping myself up and leave for Alexander to do his part of the securing the security. Sorry,
Well,
Brother Rage, please continue.
It's good to have a good,
Yeah.
The interesting thing, there's a whole bunch of stuff that Miriam said that I didn't read to you. One of the interesting things that she did say in that part that I didn't read was that what is happening right now in the world of people protesting and giving support for Ukraine and countries uniting and making sanctions on Russia and all of that, that's very unusual. That's not happened before in conflicts around the world. And she said that is actually the most effective thing that can be done, is that as people think about the good thing that they want to see, a good resolution for that for what's going on there, that they want to see peace, the war to stop, peace to happen, for Putin to not drop nuclear weapons on anybody. And they see the good things happening, and they're doing it in such masses in countries all over the world that that thought energy that people are putting out in mass amounts actually is one of the very best things that can actually effectively make a difference, because that energy goes to the soldiers who are fighting and their generals who are ordering them, their commanders that are ordering them, and they don't want to fight them. They feel that fact.
that's what I posted in my
Post that was taken away.
that's taken away is how to do exactly what he's talking about.
So yeah, they don't want to fight, and they feel bad. Their conscience pricks them, as Miriam said, and and so that's the best way to stop is the Russians, because it can't be stopped by fighting them. It can only be stopped by them not wanting to fight anymore. And that's inside the Russian leadership saying to Putin, hey, we're just not going to do this. This isn't right. We're going to stop. We're not going to do this anymore. And so that's an effective way that all the people of the world are really uniting and helping out. And so that's good.
In fact, I'll paraphrase what I wrote about is what Miriam described is if periodically throughout the day, millions of people could just send pink light to the Ukraine and picture it. That's why we had the map up, so you know exactly where you're sending that pink light. So it'll affect all the people in that area, the consciousness to some degree, even if it's very minute. And the more people that are doing this, the more effect it's going to have on the people in that area, both people that are victims and those that are the perpetrators.
Aggressors.
Right. And so it's not something that we all have to do at the same time, but just make a conscious effort to send energy to that area pink light. And what I was trying to do was to send this visualization so that people could share it, and they won't let me share it. So it's something that I don't know how. I guess we could use email to share this and send it to your friends that would be interested in knowing about or would be willing to this way. Because the more people, of course, that are doing this, the more effect it's going to have.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I'm trying to see how I could word this. Yeah, we're focusing on what's happening in Ukraine, right? That's the news that we hear all the time. That's been current. That's been vibrating for 12 days. But what about the other countries that been having things like this for like years? Countries in Brazil, countries in Africa, South Africa, countries like in Ireland, countries like in parts of Spain, countries in other areas where people don't talk about this, right? That all of a sudden, something happens in those other countries like Russia, Ukraine. There's a whole big concentration of that, right? So it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of things that we don't see or hear that's happening all the time, even in our own country, even in the United States. Well, people are dying left and right. People are getting shot at, people getting stabbed, people getting, slave, people being bodies enslaved, women's being slave, children being slave, stuff like that, right?
We had that right here in Oregon.
Right. So it's kind of interesting how the focus is being turned away from those things that are local, right, to something that's overseas. And I think that's, in a way, that's kind of interesting how it's happening, because there's other things happening beneath the scenes that we have to also be aware of as children of light, and not be so, enthralled by what's happening in other areas, but what's happening around us. We should send energy to everything around us, right? Because we are children of light. We have that connection. We have that power, right? So whatever's been happening, not on one particular location, because let me tell you right now, there's a lot of things that's happening in our backyard that it's not even talked about. But when it happens overseas, it's like, oh, it's a whole big thing, right? What about what happened in some parts of some countries in Africa, some parts of countries in Egypt, some parts of countries, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Tibet, some southern parts of China, which they don't even talk about, southern parts of Ireland, southern parts of the Caribbean, southern parts of Brazil, South America, Mexico, right? Some Indian reservations. I could go on with lists, but we as children of light will have to understand, remember that we should put our light for all those places too, and realize that we have the power to alleviate some of the tension that's occurring, but at the same time spread our energy outward. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. Those are all absolutely, right. There's conflicts that go on. That's the earth we live on. Those conflicts are going to be going on forever. But there's a particular reason that the conflict in Ukraine has come so much to the forefront, and that's because of nuclear weapons.
I understand.
So all the other conflicts, they don't have nuclear weapons involved. And see, Russia has over 6,000 nuclear weapons. And I don't know, I can't remember who I've talked to recently, but just to give you an idea, you all know what, I think, this group that I talked about, nuclear weapons, we already talked about it. Okay, so that's the reason that Ukraine is that, plus you have the largest displacement of people since World War II. So this war has only been going on for 12 days. In 12 days, over 1.5 million refugees have fled from Ukraine, and that number is just rocketing higher. So they're going to all the countries that surround here. So 1.5 million is a big number of people to leave in less than 2 weeks.
And I read that there's been over 2,000 people killed already.
Oh yeah, well, so that's all these other things are absolutely right. They're terrible atrocities that happen all over the world. It's the world we live in, and we need to send light everywhere we can if it helps. But one of the things that Miriam was talking about is that there's not a lot that can be done on large scale events by a tiny group like we have. And she did mention her previous the parts I didn't read to you. She said the one group that could help, that actually could make a difference, is if we had a quorum of 12 apostles. And that quorum of 12 apostles was physically together. She said that could help any situation. But we don't have that. So that's something we need to focus on actually calling in those apostles.
Yes.
So that happens, because that does give us some influence that we wouldn't have otherwise. But for the Ukraine, that's, you got this huge displacement of people combined with the overt threat that Putin's made of using nuclear weapons if anybody opposes them. That's why that has become a more serious situation than any other one that's in the world going on at the moment.
And then there's self-defense too. Miriam's talked to us about that as well. So you want to make sure that you're in a good position with being able to defend yourself if you need to, in whatever manner, even if it's a gun. This has been something that was an issue some years ago because, it's like, we're Celestine. Why would we need a gun? But can we do the things that Miriam can do and throw people at this point with our auras? I don't feel confident in that at this point. I'd love to be able to say I could, and maybe in the moment I could, but I need a backup.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Swear. Any other comments, questions?
So I just was wondering, has Putin been planning this for like an indefinite amount of time? Because he doesn't seem to be backing down from anything. So it seems like he's had all of this plan for some time before he actually enacted it.
What he did is what happened is when the Soviet Union broke up in 1991, and prior to that, all these countries that, including the Ukraine and Belarus and all of the countries along the north coast, Latvia, Lithuania, and countries down south, Romania, all these countries were what was called the Warsaw Pact. And they made a buffer zone between the Western European, they made a buffer zone between the Western European countries and the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union broke up and no longer and was for momentarily powerless, all these countries declared independence. And at the time, the new country of Russia said, okay, we're going to let them declare independence as long as NATO promises us. NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization that was formed after World War II to prevent the expansion of the Soviet Union. And so Russia said, we'll let these countries declare independence and won't fight them as long as NATO gives us promises that they will never expand into these countries. So NATO said, okay, we'll never expand into those countries. And so all those countries became free. They all became independent countries. And that's what happened with Ukraine and many of those other countries there. Poland was the same situation. Used to be a Warsaw Pact country. But then NATO didn't follow through with what they said. All those countries who had been under the domination of the Soviet Union said, hey, we're free. We're afraid of the Soviet Union. We don't want to ever have to worry about them coming and conquering us again. So we want to join NATO. So NATO said, okay, they let them join. They let Poland join. They let Lithuania and Latvia join, and Romania, and all those countries that had been in Warsaw Pact all of a sudden became part of NATO, which NATO had promised that they wouldn't do. But when the people begged them, please, we don't want to have the Russians come get us again. So now NATO, that after World War II only had 12 members, now it has like 30 members, or somewhere close to that, countries. There's different countries. And they've all come closer and closer and closer to Russia. So Putin made a thing, and he said, okay, this was not the deal. You guys promised that none of these countries would become NATO, and Ukraine is a country that we absolutely can't allow to become NATO because it's too important a country. It has 44 million people. It used to have nuclear weapons. It's got a huge armament industry. And so they said, Putin said he put all of his troops around in position to attack Ukraine from three sides. And then he said, okay, here's the deal. I'm right there on the border. We're just doing a training exercise, but I want all these Western countries to back down. I want you to promise that Ukraine will never be part of NATO. And I want those countries that have already become part of NATO, that used to be part of the Warsaw Pact, to no longer be part of NATO. That's my terms. So right now we're just doing training exercises, but you need to meet my terms. And if they had met his terms, which they would never do because that would be abandoning all those people, then he would have not attacked. But they didn't meet his terms. Of course, that would never happen. And so they attacked. And that's a quick synopsis, Sister Erica.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome. Anybody else, questions or comments? All right, well, we will say goodbye. Namaste to anyone who's in the Shinar. Shinar, stick around.
Thank you, Brother Reggie, for your good questions.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Namaste.
Thank you. I know it's a
Thank you,
different-
everyone.
I had some trepidation giving this talk today because it's not the positive, uplifting talk that we always come here to be part of, but it was a necessary talk. So I hope you all understand that.
Absolutely.
We all
Yes,
are
very
personal,
valuable.
that our thoughts create our reality. So
Mhm.
make them good thoughts. And, you know, with our own personal reality, we have that control. We don't, outside of our personal reality, we don't. But remember, we can create our realities the way we want them to be. Personal.
Personal bubble of our personal bubbles. Namaste, brothers and sisters. Love you so much.
Namaste. Love y'all.
See you next week.
Yes,
Love you all.
we love you.